Hello and welcome back to my channel. In this course I'm gonna introduce you to data types and variables in Java. To start out, variables are pieces of code that can change in value. So it can be one value in one place and another in another place. There are mainly 5 data types in Java. But during this course I'm gonna introduce you to the 3 main data types, which are integer, double, and character. To make a variable in Java, we start out by typing its type. So, as you can see here, I'm gonna start with integer. But to make an integer variable in Java, we don't write all the word integer, we just write int, which is the short term for integer. After writing the type of the variable, we type its name. So we need to give it a name. I'm gonna name it name, you can name it whatever you want, it's all up to you. And because this is an integer, we need to give it an int value. So let's maybe try 5. As you can see, we just created our first variable. To print variables in Java, we use the same syntax we use normally to print, as we learned in the first course. So let's type system.out.print, and let's remove this. You might think that we need to add quotations as we've done in the first tutorial, and here type the name of the variable. Now let's try what happens if we do this. I'm gonna save it and run it. As you can see, it prints the word name instead of this value. That's because, as I've told you in the first tutorial, everything between these quotations is print like it's written. So the solution is very easy. We just delete the quotations and type the name of the variable like it is. As you can see, Java tells us that this refers to this, and the warning here has disappeared. Now we just save and run, and boom, it printed 5 as we've told her to do. Now let's move on to the next data type, which is double. To make a double variable in Java, we start by typing its name as we've done with int, but this time we write the whole name, so we write double. After that we give it a name, so let's call it maybe name2, and then we give it a value, which, because it's a double, it can hold a float value, so I'm gonna give it the value maybe 5.5. And now we print it, so system.out.print, and here we're gonna call it name2. Now if we save and run, it prints 55, but we entered 5 here and 5 here. As I've told you in the first course, when writing print only, it printed both next to each other on the same line. The solution is super easy, just add ln, which means new line. Now if we save and run again, it should print them correctly. This is a brief introduction to double and int in Java. These are so powerful, and there are many things you can do using them. And if you stick to the end of this tutorial, I'm gonna make a fun example with you using int, double, and the next data type, which is character. Now let's start with character. As with int, we don't write the whole word character, we just write char. Then we give it a name, let's call it name3, then give it a value. Character can hold one character value, so it can hold any letter from A to Z, but it's only one. So in this example, maybe I'm gonna give it the letter B, like the first letter of my name, and then I'm gonna print it. I'm not gonna write this again, so I'll just copy it, and I'm gonna change this to name3 because we want to print name3. Let's add ln here, so each one will be printed on a separate line. Now let's run it, and as you can see, let me make this a little bit bigger. As you can see, here we have the first, which is integer, the second value, which is double, and the last, which is character. Now, keep in mind there are some names that variables can't take, like any name of a data type. So we can't name int, or we can't name double or character, and there are many other names that you can't name, so keep that in mind. You can search them if you want, but most of the time you will never notice that, because you will never name an int, so that's not a big deal. Now let's move on. After learning all this, we need to make a simple project to make sure that we have learned everything we've done. So let's make an example about how to calculate velocity. So as we all know, velocity equal distance over time divided by time. So to do that, we need to have three variables, which are the ones that hold the velocity value, the distance value, and the time. And maybe let's throw in another variable which will hold the letter v, so it must be a character. Let's start out by distance. Distance will be a double, because you can have a float number when having a distance. So let's make a double, then give it a name distance, then give it a value of how much. Let's give it maybe 10 kilometers. Now let's move on to our next variable, which is time. Time will be mainly an integer, so let's write int time, then give it the value. Maybe to cross 10 miles, this car took only 2 seconds, which is slow by the way, but that's fine. Now because when we are calculating our velocity, we are dividing, so we have a high chance of having a float number. So to solve that problem, we make it a double. Now double velocity equal, now we need to write the equation, which is distance over time, as we've wrote here. We just copy this and we paste it here, then we end with a semicolon. Now boom, we have our velocity, and let's end it with our character, which is character for velocity. We have already used the word velocity, so we can't use it. Let's give it the only one letter, which is v, and give it the value v, just like that, and end it with a semicolon. Now we want to print all of this. Let's start by system.out.print. So first we want to print how much distance the car took. So the distance is, now to add a variable next to a sentence, when printing we use the plus sign. So you just write plus and then write the name of the variable, which is distance, like this. Now let's copy this, Ctrl C, now Ctrl V. Let's add new line here so we don't take a chance with all of them being printed next to each other. And now let's change distance to time, because we want to print time. Here time. And last but not least, we need to print the sentence your velocity is equal v, then the value. So let's make Ctrl V like this, change this, your velocity. Now let's make it the car velocity is, then we need to add the letter v, So we write here v, then we need to write the equal sign, so we make like this, we write equal, then space, so it have a space after this, and to end it we will print our velocity. This is it. Now let's save and run our project. As you can see, everything worked just right. When we crossed 10 meters during 2 seconds, our velocity is 5. Maybe let's add the units up here, so we need to add another plus and meter per second here, or mile if you live in the United States. Also let's add here seconds, or let's just sec, and the velocity here meter, sorry, here meter per second. Now let's run it again, maybe change the values a little bit, make them a little bit weirder. So maybe it crossed 100 kilometers or meters as we've wrote during maybe 5 seconds. Now let's see how fast this car is. So this car is going 20 meters per second, which is not too bad. This is all we have for today. Wish you liked the tutorial. If you liked it, don't forget to add a like and maybe subscribe to the channel. That's it. See you on the next video.